The massive alien fleet exploded in a dazzling display of light and fire. On the bridge of the Coalition command ship, High Commander Marcus watched with growing despair as his forces crumbled before the Imperial swarm. His 4 eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of extreme stress among his species. "Third Fleet is gone, Commander," his second reported, voice trembling. "Fourth Fleet reports critical damage to their capital ships. We cannot hold this position." Marcus knew what this meant. If they lost this battle, the swarm would gain control of the Arcturus Gate, giving them direct access to 12 populated systems. Billions would die. The Coalition had fought the swarm for 20 years, but never had they faced such a devastating defeat. In Earth orbit, Captain James Walker stood on the bridge of TS Thunderchild, watching his crew run final system checks. The massive warship represented humanity's first real contribution to the galactic community, a vessel that combined Earth's primitive technology with selective advanced systems from the Coalition. The emergency transmission cut through their preparations. Walker's first officer, Robert Miller, looked up from his console. "Sir, Coalition Command is requesting immediate assistance. Their defense of the Arcturus Gate is failing." Walker frowned. The Thunderchild wasn't supposed to enter combat for another 2 weeks. The Coalition had insisted on extensive testing, not trusting human engineering. But Walker knew what the Arcturus Gate meant. Earth was one of those 12 systems it protected. "Get me Fleet Command," he ordered. The response was quick. A holographic display showing Admiral Drake's stern face. "Captain Walker, I assume you're seeing this." The Admiral's voice was grave. "The Coalition is about to lose their most important strategic position." "Yes, sir." "Permission to." "Already granted." Drake's image flickered. "The President has authorized immediate deployment. The Coalition doesn't trust us, Captain, but they're out of options. Show them what humanity can do." Walker turned to his crew. These men and women had trained for months, preparing for humanity's first major space battle. They knew the risks. The Thunderchild's design was unconventional by Coalition standards. Thick armor instead of energy shields, kinetic weapons alongside energy beams, and multiple redundant systems that aliens considered wasteful. "Battle stations," Walker commanded. The crew moved with practiced efficiency. No wasted motion, no hesitation. "Engineering, status." Chief Engineer Ann Thompson's voice came through clear. "All systems green, Captain. The reactor's running smooth, and our backup systems are ready. We can take a beating if we need to." "Weapons?" "Main gun charged, point defense grid online. Missile tubes loaded and ready." Walker nodded. The Thunderchild had been built with one philosophy in mind: survive what you can't dodge, hit back harder than they expect. The Coalition relied on shields and agility. The swarm used overwhelming numbers. Humanity had learned different lessons from its own wars. "Navigation, plot course to Arcturus Gate. Maximum speed once we clear Earth's gravity well." The massive engines came to life, pushing against Earth's pull. As they accelerated, Walker addressed the ship-wide comm. "This is the captain. We're heading into our first real fight. The Coalition doesn't think much of us or our ship. The swarm doesn't even know we exist. Let's change their minds." The Thunderchild's acceleration pressed them into their seats as Earth fell away behind them. The ship's unique design drew stares from the alien vessels they passed, its angular hull covered in thick armor plate, multiple weapon turrets tracking space around them, and the massive spinal cannon running the length of the ship. As they approached the jump point that would take them to Arcturus, Walker received one final transmission from Earth. "Captain." Admiral Drake's voice was solemn. "Remember what we discussed. The Coalition believes in overwhelming force. The swarm believes in endless numbers. Show them that humanity believes in something else. The right action at the right moment. Good hunting." The jump point flared, reality twisted, and the TNS Thunderchild vanished from Earth space. Humanity's first warship was heading to battle, carrying with it the hopes of Earth and the future of human-alien relations. The galaxy was about to learn why humans had survived countless wars on their homeworld, and why sometimes the most dangerous species are the ones who had to learn to fight the hard way. The TNS Thunderchild burst into reality near the Arcturus Gate, its sensors immediately filling with chaos. Hundreds of swarm ships swarmed around the remaining coalition vessels like angry wasps. Energy weapons crisscrossed space, and the debris of destroyed ships drifted everywhere. Status report. Walker commanded, his eyes scanning the tactical display. Coalition forces are down to 30% strength, Miller reported. The swarm is jamming all communication channels. Coalition ships can't coordinate their attacks. Walker allowed himself a small smile. While the alien ships relied entirely on advanced communication systems, the Thunderchild's crew had trained for old-fashioned visual signals and pre-planned maneuvers. They didn't need constant communication to fight effectively. Engineering. Divert power to forward armor. Weapons. Prepare the main gun. Let's introduce ourselves. The massive human warship accelerated toward the battle, its thick armor reflecting the light of nearby explosions. On the Coalition command ship, High Commander Marcus noticed the new arrival with confusion. "What is that vessel?" he demanded. "Its design is primitive." His sensor officer responded with four-armed gestures of uncertainty. "It appears to be the human warship, Commander, but it's not using any shields. They can't possibly survive in this battle." The Thunderchild proved them wrong seconds later. A swarm attack group turned to intercept the human ship, their energy weapons blazing. Hits that would have overwhelmed standard shields instead splashed against the thick armor, leaving scorch marks but failing to penetrate. "Damage report," Walker asked calmly. "Armor holding at 90%, Thompson replied from engineering. "Their weapons are hot, but they're not punching through. They've never dealt with good old-fashioned titanium-carbon composite before." Walker nodded. "Show them how we respond to a welcome party. Main gun, target the lid ship." The Thunderchild's spinal cannon hummed to life. Unlike the energy weapons used by both the Coalition and the Swarm, this was a mass accelerator, a primitive kinetic weapon that fired a solid projectile at a significant fraction of light speed. The shot blazed across space like a meteor. The Swarm ship, its defenses tuned for energy weapons, didn't stand a chance. The projectile punched through its shield like it wasn't there and tore the vessel in half. "Their shields are calibrated for energy deflection," Miller observed. "They never expected to face physical projectiles at this velocity." The remaining swarm ships scattered, their usual attack pattern disrupted by this unexpected threat. The Coalition ships watched in amazement as the human vessel pushed forward, its point defense guns swatting smaller swarm craft from space with deadly accuracy. "Send visual signals to the Coalition flagship," Walker ordered. "Tell them to form up behind us. We'll punch a hole through their line." Using light beacons to flash simple code, the Thunderchild coordinated with the surviving Coalition ships. It was slow and crude by alien standards, but it worked. The Swarm's jamming was useless against it. The human warship took the lead, its thick armor absorbing hits while its weapons cleared a path. Coalition ships followed in its wake, their energy weapons more effective now that they had a chance to concentrate their fire. "Sir," Miller reported, "Coalition ships are falling into formation. The Swarm is pulling back to regroup." Walker watched the tactical display carefully. The Swarm operated like insects, adapting quickly to new threats. They would change their tactics soon. "Thompson, how's our armor holding up?" "We can take more hits, Captain. The outer layer is ablating as designed. All systems nominal." In the midst of battle, the Thunderchild demonstrated another unique human innovation. Small repair drones emerged from hatches in its hull, patching damage even as the fight continued. The Coalition ships had never seen anything like it. Their own repair systems could only work when their vessels were safely away from combat. High Commander Marcus watched all of this with growing fascination. The human ship fought unlike anything he had seen in his long career. It was brutal and elegant at the same time, relying on physical principles that the coalition had abandoned centuries ago. "Send word to all ships," he commanded. "Support the human vessel. They know what they're doing." The battle was far from over, but for the first time since it began, hope started to replace despair in the coalition fleet. They were about to learn why humans had a reputation for turning desperate situations around, and why sometimes the old ways of war were the best ways. The swarm adapted faster than anyone expected. Their ships began targeting the Thunderchild's weapon ports, trying to disable rather than destroy. The change in tactics forced Walker to think quickly as enemy vessels pressed their attack from all sides. "They're learning," Miller said, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. Around them, coalition ships continued their rigid attack patterns, becoming predictable targets for the evolving swarm strategy. Walker watched a nearby asteroid field, an idea forming in his mind. "Thompson, how much power can you give to our cargo bay magnets?" "The mining magnets." Thompson sounded surprised. "Full power if you need it, Captain. But they're not weapons." "They are now." Walker turned to his crew. "New plan. We're going to teach both sides how humans think outside the box. Helm, take us into the asteroid field. Weapons, keep their attention on us." The Thunderchild turned toward the field of space rocks, its engines flaring. Both alien forces paused, confused by this apparent retreat. High Commander Marcus watched from his ship, his four hands gripping his command chair tightly. "The human vessel is withdrawing," his tactical officer asked. "No," Marcus replied slowly, remembering briefings about human combat history. "They're planning something. Their species has a saying about appearing weak when they are strong." The Thunderchild weaved between the asteroids, its point defense guns now firing at the rocks themselves. Each shot broke off chunks of stone and metal, creating a cloud of debris. The cargo bay doors opened, powerful magnets originally designed for mining operations humming to life. "Thompson, give me everything you can to those magnets." "Navigation, plot me a slingshot course around the largest asteroid." "Weapons, stand by on my mark." The human ship's unusual design proved its worth again. While coalition and swarm ships relied on shields that would be strained by passing through the debris field, the Thunderchild's tough armor shrugged off impacts as it gathered a trail of rock and metal behind it like a comet's tail. "Sir," Miller reported, "swarm forces are moving to cut off our exit from the asteroid field. Coalition ships are holding position, awaiting our next move." Walker grinned. "Perfect. All hands, brace for high-G maneuver. Helm, execute slingshot on my mark. Thompson, be ready to cut magnets on my command." The Thunderchild swung around the massive asteroid, using its gravity to add velocity. The trail of collected debris followed, held by the powerful magnetic field. At precisely the right moment, Walker gave his command. "Magnets off. All weapons, fire on the debris field." The Thunderchild's guns opened up on the cloud of rocks and metal, now hurtling toward the swarm formation. Each shot broke the larger pieces into deadly shrapnel, creating an expanding cone of destruction that no shield could fully deflect. Swarm ships scattered in chaos, their tight formation becoming a liability. "Coalition Command, this is Thunderchild," Walker transmitted using light signals. "Attack pattern Delta through the gap. Concentrate fire on their flanks." High Commander Marcus understood immediately. As swarm ships struggled to evade the debris field, they clustered into predictable escape routes. The coalition fleet struck these clusters with devastating effect, their energy weapons finally finding concentrated targets. "Remarkable," Marcus breathed, watching the battle shift in their favor. "They turned the very space around us into a weapon." The Thunderchild emerged from the asteroid field, its armor scratched but intact. Its guns blazed, taking advantage of the chaos it had created. The swarm's coordinated attack dissolved into individual ships fighting for survival. "Status report," Walker called out, his ship already moving to support the coalition's attack. "Hull integrity at 85%, Thompson reported. Repair drones are keeping up with damage. All weapons operational. Sir, Miller added, coalition ships are requesting our next tactical suggestion. They're actually waiting for our lead. Walker studied the battlefield. The swarm was regrouping, but their perfect formation was broken. They had learned to counter standard coalition tactics over years of war, but human unpredictability was something new, something they couldn't easily adapt to. Send word to all ships, Walker commanded. Form up on us. Let's show them what else humanity keeps in its bag of tricks. He paused, allowing himself a small smile. And tell engineering to get creative with those magnets again. Something tells me we're going to need more unconventional solutions before this day is done. The swarm brought in their heavy ships. Massive vessels, each one larger than 3 coalition battleships combined, emerged from faster-than-light travel. The sight made even the bravest coalition crews hesitate. These were the ships that had destroyed entire fleets, the ones that had never been beaten. 5 swarm dreadnoughts, Miller reported, his voice steady despite the threat. Their main weapons can tear through coalition shields in seconds. Walker studied the tactical display, noting how the smaller swarm ships were arranging themselves around their larger cousins. Thompson, give me a damage forecast if one of those things hits us directly. Even with our armor, a direct hit would breach the outer hull, Thompson replied from engineering. We might survive 1 shot, definitely not 2. Walker nodded, then made a decision that would be talked about in space academies for years to come. Plot a course directly between those dreadnoughts. All power to forward armor and engines. The bridge went silent. Miller turned to his captain. Sir, that's suicide. Even coalition ships with their best shields won't go near those things. Exactly. Walker smiled. And that's why it's going to work. Coalition command, follow our trail but hold back until my signal. All hands, prepare for extreme maneuvers. The Thunderchild turned and accelerated straight toward the wall of swarm dreadnoughts. On the coalition command ship, High Commander Marcus watched in horror. Stop them, he ordered. The human ship is going to be destroyed. But before anyone could act, the Thunderchild was already committed to its run. The massive swarm ships turned their main guns toward the approaching human vessel, energy building in their weapon ports. All hands brace, Walker commanded. Thompson, when I give the word, cut all power to everything except emergency life support and divert it to the engines. The first dreadnought fired. The Thunderchild rolled, taking the hit at an angle. Armor plates melted and peeled away, but the ship kept going. Hull breach on decks 4 through 6, Thompson reported. Emergency bulkheads holding. Repair drones deploying. The human ship didn't slow down. It charged straight between 2 of the dreadnoughts, so close that the energy fields around their hulls made the Thunderchild sensors scream in protest. Now, Walker ordered. All power to engines. The Thunderchild's engines flared impossibly bright as every scrap of power was diverted to them. The ship shot forward like a bullet, passing between the dreadnoughts before their main guns could track it. The massive ships tried to turn, but their size worked against them. Coalition fleet, attack pattern Omega. Walker transmitted. Target their rear armor. The coalition ships, which had been holding back, suddenly understood the human plan. The swarm dreadnoughts had positioned themselves in a wall, expecting an attack from the front where their strongest armor and weapons were concentrated. Now the Thunderchild had slipped behind them, and their rear defenses were exposed. Remarkable, Marcus breathed, watching as his fleet poured fire into the dreadnought's vulnerable rear sections. They used our enemy's strength against them. The Thunderchild, despite its damage, swung around and added its own weapons to the barrage. Its kinetic rounds punched through the weakened rear armor of the nearest dreadnought, hitting something vital deep inside. The massive ship began to break apart. Engineering, get our systems back online, Walker ordered. Weapons, target their engine sections. That's where they're weakest. Thompson's voice came back, filled with pride in her engines. Restoring power now, Captain. The old girl took a beating, but she's still fighting. The battle had shifted completely. The swarm dreadnoughts, designed to fight head-on, found themselves caught in a crossfire between the Thunderchild and the Coalition fleet. Their smaller escort ships tried to help, but they had to break formation to do so, making them easy targets. "Sir," Miller reported, "2 dreadnoughts confirmed destroyed. The others are trying to retreat." Walker watched as the remaining swarm ships attempted to regroup. The Thunderchild's hull was scared, portions of its armor completely gone, but it had achieved what the Coalition had thought impossible. It had proven that the dreaded dreadnoughts could be beaten. "Status of the crew?" Walker asked. "Some injuries from the power surge and impact," Miller replied. "But everyone's alive. They're already asking when we can do it again." The captain allowed himself a small laugh. His crew, like the ship itself, had proven that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in its technology or its weapons. It was in the willingness to take calculated risks that others thought insane, and the ability to make those risks pay off. The battle was won, but victory came with a price. Walker stood in the Thunderchild's medical bay, looking at the rows of injured crew members. The ship's doctor moved between beds, treating plasma burns and injuries from when systems had overloaded during their desperate charge. "How many?" Walker asked quietly. "We lost 12, Miller replied, standing beside his captain. "Engineering took the worst hit when that power surge blew through Deck 5. Thompson's team. They held their posts even when the hull was breaching. Kept the engines running." Walker nodded slowly. In the bed nearest to him, a young engineer slept, her arms wrapped in bandages where she grabbed hot power cables to manually restore power to the life support systems. The Coalition ships might not understand, but every human aboard knew that sometimes saving the many meant risking the few. The ship's intercom crackled. "Captain to the bridge. Coalition Command is requesting your presence for a battlefield assessment." In the space around them, the combined fleet was regrouping. The remains of 3 swarm dreadnoughts drifted in space, their massive hulls torn open by the unprecedented attack. The Thunderchild floated among the Coalition ships, its armor scarred and broken in dozens of places. Repair drones worked tirelessly, but some damage wouldn't be fixed without a proper dock. Walker returned to the bridge, where the holographic image of High Commander Marcus waited. The alien leader's 4 eyes widened at the visible damage to the human bridge. "Captain Walker," Marcus spoke carefully, "your tactics were unexpected. Our analysts are still trying to understand why you chose such a dangerous approach. Sometimes the best move is the one your enemy thinks is too crazy to try," Walker replied, settling into his damaged command chair. "We lost good people proving that point." Marcus's expression showed confusion. "But you achieved victory. The swarm dreadnoughts were destroyed. Such losses are acceptable for such a gain." Walker's face hardened slightly. "No, Commander. The losses aren't acceptable. They're necessary, and we honor them, but we never accept them. Every life lost today leaves an empty chair somewhere back on Earth. A family missing someone who won't come home." The alien commander fell silent, studying the human captain with new interest. Around them, Coalition ships were beginning to form defensive positions around the Arcturus Gate. The remaining swarm forces had retreated, but everyone knew they would return. "Sir," Thompson's voice came over the comm, tired but determined. "Engineering report. We've sealed the hull breaches and restored power to all critical systems. But," she paused, emotion clear in her voice, "Deck 5 is gone. We couldn't save all our people." Walker closed his eyes for a moment. "Understood, Chief. Begin preparations for memorial services. We do this properly." The Coalition commander watched this exchange with growing fascination. "Your species mourns during battle. This is most unusual." "We mourn, we celebrate, we remember, and we keep fighting," Walker explained. "It's what makes us human. Each loss makes us stronger, not because we accept it, but because we feel it. We make it mean something." Through the bridge viewport, Walker could see repair crews in spacesuits working on the outer hull. They had rigged a makeshift system using the mining magnets to hold replacement armor plates in place. The Thunderchild might be damaged, but like her crew, she refused to quit. "Commander Marcus," Walker turned back to the hologram, "my crew needs an hour. 1 hour to honor our dead and repair what we can. Then we'll be ready to help defend this position." Marcus gestured agreement with all 4 hands, a sign of deep respect in his culture. "Take the time you need, Captain. The Coalition fleet will hold position. We have much to learn about how humans wage war." When the transmission ended, Walker stood slowly. "Miller, gather all off-duty personnel in the main hangar. Contact medical. Have them prepare our people for space burial. We do this by the book." Throughout the ship, the surviving crew members paused in their repair work. The word spread quickly. They would honor their fallen first, then return to the fight. It was the human way, a tradition as old as war itself. Thompson's voice came over the comm again, speaking for everyone aboard. "We'll make them proud, Captain. The swarm will remember the ones we lost today. They'll remember what it cost them to learn not to underestimate humanity." The Coalition fleet officers gathered in the main conference room of their command ship, their eyes fixed on the battle recordings playing on the large screen. They watched again as the Thunderchild charged between the swarm dreadnoughts, a move that violated every principle of their naval doctrine. High Commander Marcus stood before his officers, all 4 arms clasped behind his back. "What you have witnessed today is something unprecedented. The humans call it a game changer." The tactical officer raised a hand. "Commander, with respect, the human ship nearly destroyed itself. Their casualties were significant. By our standards, such risks are unnecessary." "Are they?" Marcus walked closer to the screen, pointing to the moment when the Thunderchild diverted all power to its engines. "Look closer." Every move was calculated. Even their damages were anticipated. In another part of the fleet, the Thunderchild had become an object of fascination. Alien crews in nearby ships watched through their viewports as the human vessel continued its repairs. The sight of crew members physically working on the outer hull amazed them. Their own ships relied entirely on automated systems. Walker stood on his bridge, now hosting a delegation of Coalition engineers. They moved around like excited children, scanning everything with their instruments. "Your armor," one engineer chittered in translated speech. "It's designed to be damaged, to be replaced. This is inefficient." Thompson, who was guiding the tour, smiled proudly. "Efficient isn't always effective. Our armor takes hits so our people don't have to. And unlike your shields, when our defenses break, we can fix them with simple materials." The aliens watched as another repair crew magnetized a new armor plate into position. Their instruments showed that the plate was nothing special, just processed metal and composite materials. But its simplicity was exactly what made it brilliant. "Your crew," another Coalition officer observed, "they celebrate even now." After such losses, Walker looked through the viewport where some off-duty crew members were gathering in the recreation area. They were sharing stories about their fallen comrades, laughing at good memories even as tears fell. "We mourn and celebrate together," Walker explained. "Each person we lost made us who we are. Their stories make us stronger. It's not about forgetting the pain. It's about making it mean something." The alien officers exchanged glances, their species equivalent of deep thought showing in their postures. They had always seen humans as primitive, emotional beings. Now they were beginning to understand that those emotions weren't a weakness, they were a different kind of strength. In the ship's mess hall, human crew members had invited Coalition technicians to share a meal. Another concept that amazed the aliens. Their own species ate in private, seeing it as a sign of weakness. But here were these humans, sharing food and stories mere hours after intense combat. "Tell us," one Coalition officer asked during the meal, "why do you name your ships? Our vessels have designations, but you give them personalities." A veteran crew member wiped his mouth and smiled. "Thunderchild isn't just a name. It's a promise. In Earth's history, there was a ship that fought against impossible odds to protect others. We carry that spirit. Every ship's name is a story, a legacy we have to live up to. The aliens recorded everything, trying to understand. They watched how the humans repaired their ship while honoring their dead, how they planned the next battle while celebrating survival, how they treated their vessel not as a weapon but as a home. High Commander Marcus received the reports from all these observations. Each one painted a clearer picture of why the humans fought the way they did. Their technology wasn't primitive. It was tested. Their emotions weren't chaotic. They were purposeful. Their tactics weren't reckless. They were just braver than anything the Coalition had dared to try. "Send word to Coalition Command," Marcus ordered. "The humans have shown us something important today. Perhaps it is time we stopped trying to teach them our ways of war and started learning from theirs." As the message was sent, the Thunderchild's crew continued their work. They knew the swarm would return, probably with new tactics to counter what they'd seen. But that was fine. Humans had been adapting and overcoming challenges since they first looked up at the stars. They would be ready. And now they had allies who were beginning to understand just what humanity could do. 10 days after the battle at Arcturus Gate, ships from across the Coalition gathered for an unprecedented ceremony. The Thundershield floated at the center of the formation, its hull bearing the scars of combat like badges of honor. The repairs were complete, but Captain Walker had ordered some of the damage left visible, a reminder of what they'd learned and lost. High Commander Marcus stood on his flagship's bridge, watching as hundreds of alien vessels arranged themselves in a pattern that, until recently, would have seemed chaotic to him. But now he understood. They were forming a guard of honor, a human tradition his fleet had chosen to adopt. "Send the signal," he ordered. "All ships present arms in the human way." Each Coalition vessel turned on its running lights, creating rivers of light in space. It was a gesture borrowed from Earth's naval traditions, marking respect for fallen warriors. The Thunderchild's crew watched from their viewports, many wiping away tears at this alien fleet honoring their dead in a human way. "The swarm will return," Walker spoke to the assembled fleet commanders through the comm system. "They always do. But today we prove that we're stronger together, not because we fight the same way, but because we fight differently." The Coalition's Supreme Commander, an ancient being who rarely left their homeworld, had traveled to witness this moment. Their holographic form appeared on every ship's bridge. For centuries, the Supreme Commander's translated voice echoed. "We fought the swarm with rigid doctrine and perfect formation. We treated war like a science. The humans." They paused, choosing words carefully. "They showed us that war is also an art." Their victory was not just in destroying the dreadnoughts, but in showing us a new way to think. Throughout the Coalition fleet, changes were already visible. Ships were being refitted with hybrid systems, combining shields with physical armor. Crews were training in communications without relying on complex networks. The Coalition was learning that sometimes the old ways, the simple ways, were the best ways. "Captain Walker," the Supreme Commander continued, "your ship and crew have earned their place in Coalition history. But more importantly, you have earned our trust." The human saying, "Actions speak louder than words," we understand it now. The Thunderchild's crew had gathered in the main hangar, standing at attention as Walker accepted the transmission. Behind them hung a new memorial wall, bearing the names of those lost in the battle. But unlike Coalition memorials, which listed only ranks and achievements, this one included personal stories, favorite jokes, dreams left unfulfilled, the human way of remembering. In the days following the battle, something else had changed. Coalition crews began sharing meals together, telling stories, celebrating victories, and mourning losses openly. They learned from the humans that emotion wasn't a weakness to hide, but a strength to share. "The swarm thinks they know us now," Walker addressed the fleet. "They've seen our technology, studied our tactics, but they don't understand what makes us strong. Every species here fights for something different, For duty, for honor, for survival. Humans, we fight for each other. And now, we fight for all of you too. Reports from deep space probes showed the swarm was gathering its forces, preparing for another attack. But there was no fear in the coalition fleet now. They had learned that victory wasn't just about superior technology or numbers. It was about courage, creativity, and the willingness to try the impossible. To all ships, High Commander Marcus gave his final order of the day: form up on the Thunderchild. Today we begin training in human tactical doctrines. Today we learn to think differently. As the fleet moved into position, Walker stood on his bridge, watching the stars. The Thunderchild's scars would remind everyone of the cost of victory, but also of humanity's greatest lesson to the galaxy. That strength comes in many forms, that emotion and reason can work together, and that sometimes the simplest solutions are the most powerful. The coalition would never be the same. They had learned to combine their advanced technology with human ingenuity, their disciplined training with human adaptability. And the swarm, they would soon learn that the galaxy had changed. Because now they didn't face a fleet that fought with perfect formation and predictable tactics. Now they faced a fleet that had learned to fight with humanity's greatest weapons: courage, creativity, and the unshakable will to protect one another. The day a human warship entered the fight, the galaxy changed forever, and it would never stop trembling.